Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that the life you're living right now, every result, every success, every frustration, is not controlled by luck, fate, or other people, but by one decision you make every single day, the decision to take full responsibility. Taking full responsibility for your life means recognizing that your decisions, behaviors, and reactions play the central role in shaping your outcomes. It is the mindset that says your life is not driven mainly by luck, other people, or external events, but by how you choose to think and act each day. Many people spend years waiting for the right time, the right support, or the right opportunity, believing that something outside them must change first. However, real progress begins when you accept that, regardless of the situation, you always have some level of control over your direction. This belief shifts you from a passive position to an active one, where you begin to look for solutions instead of excuses. When you truly accept responsibility, you become more aware of your choices. Small daily decisions, how you use your time, how you respond to challenges, how you treat your commitments, start to matter more. Instead of saying circumstances forced a result, you examine how your preparation, priorities, or persistence influenced it. This awareness is powerful because it puts you in a position to improve. If your actions contributed to where you are, then different actions can take you somewhere better. That realization builds confidence and reduces the feeling of being stuck. Taking responsibility also strengthens discipline. You start holding yourself accountable even when no one is watching. You follow through on promises to yourself, manage your habits more carefully, and become honest about where you need growth. This honesty is not about self-blame, it is about self-leadership. You stop wasting energy comparing your journey to others and invest it in developing your own skills and mindset. Over time, this creates reliability and resilience, qualities that open doors in careers, relationships, and personal goals. Another important part is emotional responsibility. Your feelings are valid, but how you handle them is your choice. Instead of letting anger, fear, or disappointment control your actions, you learn to pause and choose a response that supports your long-term goals. This creates stability and maturity, making it easier to navigate setbacks. Life will always include unpredictable events, but a person who takes responsibility focuses on what can be influenced, adjusted, or learned from, turning everyday decisions into building blocks for a stronger, more directed life driven by personal ownership and consistent intentional action that aligns behavior with values and priorities, while steadily shaping results through deliberate choice and self-guided direction. Blaming others for what happens in your life may feel natural, especially when situations are painful, unfair, or disappointing, but it quietly removes your sense of control. When you blame, you place the cause of your problems outside yourself, which also places the solution outside yourself. This creates a mindset where you are waiting for other people to change, for circumstances to improve, or for luck to arrive before your life can get better. In that state, progress slows down because your focus is on what you cannot command. Blame can provide short-term emotional relief because it protects your ego from discomfort, yet it also builds a habit of avoidance. Over time, this habit weakens confidence because deep down you begin to feel that your results depend on forces you cannot influence. Ownership works differently. Ownership means you deliberately choose to look at your role in any outcome, even when others are involved. It does not mean you accept unfair guilt or that you excuse other people's mistakes. It means you ask, what part of this is within my control? That question immediately shifts your brain toward solutions. Instead of replaying what someone else did wrong, you evaluate your preparation, your communication, your boundaries, or your reactions. This reflection often reveals small adjustments that can create better results next time. Those small adjustments, repeated consistently, lead to meaningful change. When you practice ownership, you strengthen your internal locus of control. You start seeing yourself as someone who can influence outcomes through effort, learning, and strategy. This belief increases motivation because your actions feel connected to your future. You become more proactive, setting clearer goals and taking initiative rather than waiting for direction. Relationships also improve because you communicate needs more clearly and take responsibility for your words and behavior. People tend to respect and trust those who own their actions. There is also a psychological freedom in ownership. Resentment decreases because your attention moves from judging others to improving yourself. Energy that was once spent complaining is redirected toward growth. You begin to notice opportunities where you once saw only obstacles. Even in difficult environments, you look for skills to build and lessons to extract. This approach develops resilience, making setbacks feel temporary rather than defining. Gradually, you build a reputation with yourself as someone dependable and capable, which reinforces self-respect and personal direction while keeping your focus on choices and responses that remain within your reach and influence every day through awareness and deliberate action that reinforces control from within rather than dependence on external behavior or circumstances. Responsibility isn't admitting fault or taking the blame for everything that goes wrong, but true responsibility is more constructive and forward-looking than that. It focuses on how you respond to situations and how you grow from them rather than who is at fault. In life, many events involve multiple factors and people, and not all of them are under your control. If responsibility only meant fault, it would become a heavy burden filled with guilt and regret. However, when you see responsibility as your ability to respond, it becomes a source of strength. You stop asking, whose fault is this? And start asking, what can I do now? That simple shift changes your direction from the past to the future. A response-based view of responsibility encourages learning. Every experience, especially difficult ones, carries feedback. Maybe a plan failed because preparation was weak, communication was unclear, or timing was poor. Instead of labeling yourself or others as the problem, you analyze the situation calmly and look for improvements. This creates a growth mindset where mistakes are not proof of failure, but information for progress. People who grow consistently are not those who avoid mistakes, but those who respond to mistakes intelligently. They adjust their strategies, build new skills, and become wiser with each experience. This perspective also protects your self-worth. When responsibility equals fault, people become defensive because they want to avoid shame. When responsibility equals growth, people become open because they want to improve. You can admit that something did not go well without attacking your own value. You recognize that a poor result is connected to a behavior or decision, not your identity. That separation makes it easier to change. Growth requires honesty, and honesty is easier when it is not tied to harsh self-judgment. Focusing on response builds emotional maturity as well. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause and choose actions that align with your long-term goals. You learn to manage disappointment, frustration, and pressure with more control. Over time, this habit shapes your character. Others begin to see you as reliable and solution-oriented because you do not get stuck on blame. You look for ways to move forward, improve systems, and strengthen yourself. This approach keeps your energy directed toward development, turning everyday challenges into chances to become more capable, more aware, and more prepared for future situations by treating each response as a step in continuous personal evolution and practical learning through experience and thoughtful adjustment. The questions you ask yourself every day quietly shape your mindset, your emotions, and your actions. When something goes wrong, your first internal question often determines whether you feel stuck or motivated. A question like, "Why me?" usually comes from frustration or self-pity, and while those feelings are human, that question directs your mind toward blame, unfairness, and problems you cannot control. Your brain begins searching for reasons to justify the pain, and it often finds memories, comparisons, or assumptions that make you feel worse. This can create a cycle where you focus more on the problem than on possible solutions. Over time, this pattern can lower confidence and reduce initiative because your attention is trained on what is happening to you rather than what you can do about it. Empowering questions work differently because they shift your focus toward growth and possibility. When you ask, "What can I learn from this?" or "How can this make me better?" your mind starts scanning for useful insights. Instead of replaying the negative moment, you begin identifying lessons, skills to improve, or perspectives to adjust. This does not erase disappointment, but it transforms it into something productive. You become a participant in your progress rather than a spectator of your problems. Such questions encourage curiosity and problem solving, which are essential for personal development. Empowering questions also build resilience. Challenges become less threatening when you see them as teachers. You start to notice patterns in your behavior, recognize weak areas, and take steps to strengthen them. For example, a setback at work might reveal the need for better planning or communication. A conflict in a relationship might highlight the importance of listening or setting boundaries. Each lesson becomes a tool for the future. This approach makes growth intentional instead of accidental. Another benefit is emotional control. The brain responds to questions by searching for answers, so the quality of your questions influences your emotional direction. Constructive questions guide you toward calm reflection and practical action. They reduce the time spent complaining and increase the time spent improving. Gradually, this habit changes how you see yourself, from someone who is overwhelmed by events to someone who can learn from them. Your inner dialogue becomes more supportive and solution-focused, which influences your decisions, your confidence, and the way you approach new challenges with a mindset oriented toward learning, adaptation, and forward movement through thoughtful self-questioning that keeps attention on growth and useful insight rather than on helplessness or blame. Owning your choices, actions, and standards means accepting that the direction of your life is largely influenced by what you repeatedly decide, do, and tolerate. Every day is filled with choices, many of them small and easy to ignore, yet they quietly accumulate into long-term results. The decision to wake up early or sleep in, to prepare or procrastinate, to speak carefully or react emotionally, to save or spend, to learn or scroll. These moments seem minor, but they build patterns. When you truly own your choices, you stop pretending they are random or forced on you. You recognize that even when options are limited, you still select your response. This awareness creates intentional living, where your decisions are guided by purpose rather than impulse. Owning your actions goes a step further. It requires honesty about what you actually do, not what you say you will do. Many people have good intentions, but results come from consistent behavior. When you take ownership of your actions, you hold yourself accountable for follow-through. If you commit to something, you complete it. If you fall short, you admit it and adjust. This builds self-trust, which is one of the strongest foundations for confidence. You begin to see yourself as reliable, and that belief influences how boldly you set goals and how seriously you pursue them. Others also notice this reliability, which can open opportunities and strengthen relationships. Standards are the rules you set for what is acceptable in your life. They influence how you manage time, how you allow others to treat you, how much effort you give, and what level of quality you expect from yourself. Low standards often lead to repeated disappointment because they permit poor habits and weak discipline. High standards push you to prepare better, act with integrity, and persist longer. They are not about perfection, they are about refusing to settle for less than your potential. When your standards rise, your behavior naturally rises to match them. Together, choices, actions, and standards create a personal system that directs your future. They influence your skills, reputation, health, finances, and relationships. When you own them fully, you stop drifting and start directing your path with clarity, gradually shaping a life that reflects your priorities, values, and level of commitment through repeated decisions that align daily behavior with the person you are to become and the results you are working toward over time through personal discipline and conscious control of your direction. Rising your personal standards means deciding that the minimum you once accept is no longer enough for the future you want to build. Standards act like an internal measuring line for your behavior, effort, and tolerance. They influence how seriously you take your goals, how you manage your time, how you treat your health, and what you allow in your environment. Many people desire better results, yet they keep the same standards and discipline, focus, and consistency, which leads to repeated outcomes. When your standards stay low, it becomes easy to justify procrastination, accept average performance, or remain in situations that limit growth. Higher standards, on the other hand, create internal pressure to act differently because you no longer feel comfortable with less than your best. Raising standards begins with clarity about what you truly want. When your vision becomes stronger than your comfort, your standards naturally increase. You start expecting more from your habits, your work quality, and your daily routines. For example, instead of working only when you feel motivated, you work because it aligns with your identity and goals. Instead of accepting poor time management, you plan your day with intention. These changes may seem strict at first, but they build self-respect. Each time you meet a higher standard, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more, and that proof strengthens confidence. Higher standards also shape your environment. You become more selective about influences, conversations, and commitments. You value learning, growth, and productivity more than temporary comfort. This does not mean becoming perfect or never resting. It means being intentional about when and why you rest. Rest becomes part of preparation, not an escape from responsibility. Over time, this mindset reduces regret because your actions align more closely with your priorities. Another important part is the standard you set for how others treat you. When you value your time and energy, you set clear boundaries. You communicate expectations calmly and respectfully, which often leads to healthier relationships. People tend to respond to the standards you consistently maintain. If you tolerate disrespect or low effort, it often continues. If you demonstrate discipline and self-respect, others recognize it. As your standards rise, your identity evolves. You begin to see yourself as someone who prepares, follows through, and improves continuously. This identity influences decisions automatically, making productive behavior more natural and less forced, gradually turning daily actions into evidence of a higher level of commitment and personal expectation that shapes how you approach work, goals, and responsibilities in everyday situations through deliberate effort and awareness of the level you choose to accept from yourself and your routines. Making excuses is one of the most common habits that quietly blocks progress. An excuse often sounds reasonable in the moment because it explains why something was not done or why a goal was delayed. It protects you from discomfort, embarrassment, or the fear of failure. However, while excuses may comfort you today, they create a pattern that weakens your future. Each excuse trains your mind to look for escape routes instead of solutions. Over time, this reduces your sense of urgency and responsibility. You begin to accept less from yourself, not because you lack ability, but because you repeatedly justify inaction. Excuses often appear in subtle forms: blaming lack of time, waiting for motivation, saying conditions are not perfect, or believing you need more resources before starting are common examples. Sometimes these reasons have truth in them, but when they become repeated justifications, they turn into barriers. Many successful people started with limited time, energy, or support, yet they focused on what they could do rather than what they lacked. The difference is not the absence of difficulty, but the refusal to let difficulty become a permanent explanation. Another problem with excuses is that they shift focus away from improvement. If the reason for poor results is always external, there is no reason to change your behavior. Growth requires honest reflection, and excuses interrupt that process. When you stop making excuses, you start asking better questions like what small step you can take, what skill you can build, or what habit you can change. These questions lead to action, and action leads to momentum. Letting go of excuses also builds mental toughness. You learn to act even when you do not feel like it. You become more comfortable with discomfort, which is where most growth happens. Discipline grows when you choose action over justification. Each time you follow through despite inconvenience, you strengthen self-control and confidence. You begin to trust yourself because your words match your actions. Removing excuses does not mean being harsh on yourself or ignoring real challenges. It means being solution-focused. If you are tired, you manage your energy better. If you lack knowledge, you learn. If you fail, you adjust. This mindset keeps you moving forward. Progress may be slow at times, but it becomes consistent. When excuses lose their power, your decisions become more intentional, your effort becomes more reliable, and your path becomes clearer because your energy is directed toward action and improvement rather than explanation and delay through repeated justification that limits growth and reduces long-term potential. Focusing on what you can control is one of the most powerful habits for creating meaningful results in life. Too often, people spend time worrying about circumstances, other people's actions, or events that are completely outside their influence. This focus may feel productive, but it usually leads to frustration, stress, and wasted energy. When attention is given to things beyond your control, it diminishes the mental and emotional space available for action. By contrast, when you concentrate on what is within your influence, your thoughts, your choices, your habits, and your effort, you begin to direct your energy toward outcomes you can actually change. This mindset shift creates clarity and empowerment because instead of feeling like a victim of circumstance, you become a participant in shaping your life. Control is rarely about dramatic actions. It is often found in small, consistent behaviors. How you manage your time, how you respond to setbacks, how you communicate, how you prepare, and how you show up every day are all within your sphere of influence. By paying attention to these areas, you create leverage that eventually impacts larger results. People who master their control in small ways gradually develop momentum, and that momentum compounds into significant achievement. Meanwhile, those who dwell on external factors remain reactive, constantly adjusting to forces outside their influence, which leads to inconsistency and stagnation. Emotional regulation is also a key part of focusing on what you can control. You cannot dictate how others act or how events unfold, but you can choose your response. This means managing anger, fear, disappointment, or impatience and channeling them into constructive action. Emotional discipline allows you to maintain clarity under pressure and make decisions aligned with your long-term goals rather than temporary impulses. It strengthens resilience, making challenges easier to navigate without losing focus or energy. Focusing on controllable factors also encourages problem solving and creativity. When you look at what you can change, your mind naturally starts generating solutions instead of dwelling on obstacles. You begin asking better questions like how you can improve your approach, what resources you can leverage, or which habits will move you forward. Over time, this habit builds self-reliance, accountability, and confidence because your results increasingly reflect your effort and choices rather than luck or external interference. By consistently directing attention and energy toward controllable elements, you create progress, mastery, and a sense of personal power that grows steadily while limiting wasted effort and frustration, reinforcing the principle that influence and consistent action produce results more reliably than concern over circumstances that remain outside your reach. Realizing that you are capable of changing your results is a cornerstone of personal empowerment. Many people feel trapped by their circumstances, believing that their current situation defines their limits or determines their future. This sense of helplessness often comes from seeing outcomes as fixed or beyond personal influence. However, understanding that your results are largely shaped by your decisions, habits, and effort shifts the perspective entirely. When you accept that your actions directly influence outcomes, you also accept that different choices can create different results. This awareness transforms frustration into motivation and helplessness into opportunity because it emphasizes action over complaint. The ability to change results begins with honest self-assessment. You must examine what has contributed to your current situation, your behaviors, routines, and decisions, without self-blame, and identify where change is possible. Once you recognize patterns that produce unwanted results, you can experiment with new approaches. This might involve improving skills, adjusting habits, managing time more effectively, or refining your mindset. Even small, consistent changes compound over time into significant improvement. The principle is simple: if what you are doing now produces certain results, then changing what you do, even slightly, produces different results. Believing in your ability to change also enhances perseverance. When challenges arise, setbacks no longer feel like permanent defeat, they become opportunities to adjust strategy and learn. Instead of giving up, you explore alternatives, test solutions, and measure progress. This mindset fosters resilience because you understand that temporary failure is not a reflection of your potential, but an indication that adaptation is needed. You gain a sense of agency and confidence, knowing that effort and intelligent decision making can influence outcomes more than luck or external factors. Another important aspect is the alignment of choices with goals. When you know your actions can alter results, you become intentional about where to invest your energy. Prioritization becomes clearer, and distractions lose their power. You are more likely to pursue high-value activities consistently, knowing that each decision accumulates into measurable impact. Relationships, career, health, and personal growth all respond to this deliberate approach because consistent, purposeful action creates momentum that compounds over time. This belief also cultivates a proactive mindset. Instead of waiting for conditions to improve or hoping for external solutions, you focus on what you can control and act decisively. You learn to measure progress, celebrate improvements, and continually refine your methods. Each step reinforces the principle that results are not fixed, they are flexible, responsive, and influenced by your choices, dedication, and persistence, building a cycle of empowerment that encourages continual growth, adaptation, and measurable achievement in all areas of life. Understanding that you are the author of your life story, rather than a passive victim, is a transformative mindset that shifts responsibility and power firmly into your hands. Many people fall into the trap of thinking that life happens to them, that circumstances, other people, or unforeseen events dictate their path. This mindset creates passivity and a sense of helplessness, where decisions are delayed, opportunities are ignored, and growth is stunted. Recognizing that you are the author changes everything because it positions you as the central figure capable of shaping your narrative through choices, actions, and attitudes. Life becomes less about what happens to you and more about how you respond, adapt, and steer toward your goals. Being the author means understanding that every decision, no matter how small, contributes to the story you are creating. The books of successful lives are written not in single grand events, but in the accumulation of daily decisions, habits, and reactions. Choosing how you spend your time, the people you surround yourself with, the standards you maintain, and the effort you invest all compose chapters of your life. Each choice either strengthens your narrative or detracts from it. When you accept authorship, you stop waiting for external validation or circumstances to align perfectly before taking action. You realize that waiting for the right moment is a passive plot device, whereas proactive decision-making propels the story forward. This mindset also encourages ownership over failures and setbacks. As the author, you see obstacles as plot points rather than endpoints. Challenges are not punishments or indicators of your limitations. They are opportunities to write resilience, creativity, and problem solving into your story. By analyzing what went wrong, learning lessons, and adjusting your strategy, you actively shape the direction of your narrative. This approach transforms mistakes from sources of shame into catalysts for growth and character development, reinforcing the idea that your story is dynamic and responsive to your choices. Being the author also means consciously choosing your values, goals, and priorities. It requires intentionality in your behavior and persistence in the face of difficulty. Instead of drifting aimlessly or reacting to external pressures, you set the tone and pace of your own journey. This empowers you to create consistency in habits, clarity in purpose, and alignment between actions and desired outcomes. Over time, living as the author of your life builds confidence, self-respect, and a sense of control because your results increasingly reflect your deliberate decisions, standards, and commitment rather than chance, circumstance, or the influence of others, solidifying a life shaped by personal accountability, intentional action, and the conscious direction of choices that define your ongoing narrative. Recognizing that you are the author of your life story is one of the most empowering realizations a person can have. Too often, people live as if life happens to them, allowing circumstances, other people's actions, or unexpected events to dictate their direction. This mindset fosters passivity, frustration, and a sense of helplessness because it puts control outside of your own hands. When you shift to seeing yourself as the author, you embrace the idea that you are the central force shaping your experiences, outcomes, and future. Every choice, decision, and action becomes a deliberate word, sentence, or chapter in the story you are writing. Life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you actively create. Being the author means understanding that your daily decisions matter far more than isolated moments of success or failure. The accumulation of small actions, how you spend your time, how you respond to challenges, how you communicate with others, and the habits you cultivate constructs the narrative of your life. Each choice either strengthens your direction or diverts you from it. When you accept this authorship, you stop waiting for the perfect moment or hoping that circumstances will align in your favor. Instead, you begin making intentional decisions that move you toward your goals, consistently writing the story you want rather than passively reacting to events. This perspective also changes the way you view setbacks and mistakes. As the author, obstacles are plot points, not the end of the story. Challenges and failures become opportunities to add depth, resilience, and creativity to your narrative. Instead of assigning blame or feeling defeated, you examine what happened, learn from it, and take action to redirect your story. Mistakes are no longer proof of inadequacy. They are evidence that you are actively engaged in shaping your life and learning along the way. Living as the author of your life also requires clarity and intentionality in your values, priorities, and standards. It encourages self-discipline and deliberate action, aligning your daily behavior with your long-term vision. You begin to make choices that reflect who you want to become rather than who circumstances suggest you are. This mindset builds confidence, accountability, and a sense of personal power because your life increasingly reflects your deliberate actions rather than chance, other people's influence, or external conditions, establishing a foundation where every decision contributes meaningfully to the ongoing creation of a purposeful and directed life. The power to change your life has always been within you, and recognizing this is one of the most liberating truths a person can embrace. Many individuals wait for external circumstances to shift or for someone else to provide guidance, resources, or opportunities, believing that transformation depends on forces outside themselves. This mindset often leads to stagnation because it places control in someone else's hands. The moment you understand that your own choices, actions, and mindset hold the key to change, you step into a position of true agency. You no longer see yourself as a passive participant in life. Instead, you become the driver of your own results. This realization begins with acknowledging your responsibility for your current reality. If your life is not where you want it to be, it is a reflection of the decisions you have made and the habits you have cultivated. While circumstances and challenges exist, they are not the ultimate determinants of your success or happiness. By focusing on what you can control, your effort, attitude, and consistency, you reclaim the ability to shape outcomes. Each decision becomes a tool for growth, and each action compounds over time into measurable progress. Understanding this principle transforms obstacles from insurmountable barriers into opportunities to exercise your agency and develop new skills, resilience, and insight. Recognizing your internal power also shifts your mindset from reactive to proactive. Instead of waiting for external validation or favorable conditions, you take deliberate steps toward your goals regardless of uncertainty or setbacks. You analyze situations strategically, identify the levers within your control, and consistently apply effort in those areas. This focus on actionable factors ensures that progress is not dependent on luck or external approval, but on deliberate, consistent action aligned with your vision. Over time, this builds confidence because results become the natural outcome of your sustained effort rather than unpredictable chance. Moreover, Embracing the power within nurtures self-reliance and independence. You begin to trust your judgment, take calculated risks, and embrace responsibility for both successes and failures. Setbacks no longer feel catastrophic because you know that recovery and growth are within your control. By consistently applying this principle, you create a life guided by intentionality, discipline, and adaptability, where each choice reinforces the understanding that your influence over your future is stronger than any circumstance, and your capacity to shape your own results grows steadily through conscious, empowered action that transforms potential into reality. The quality of your life is determined not by external circumstances, luck, or other people's actions, but by the standards you set for yourself and the courage you have to uphold them. Many individuals drift through life, reacting to situations rather than intentionally shaping them, often accepting mediocrity or compromise simply because it feels easier or safer. When you consciously raise your standards, you create a benchmark for the behavior, effort, and results you expect from yourself. These standards act as a compass guiding decisions, habits, and responses. They determine the energy you invest in work, relationships, personal growth, and even self-care. High standards push you to operate at your potential consistently, whereas low standards make it easy to rationalize procrastination, poor choices, and complacency. Courage is the mechanism that allows you to live by your standards. It is one thing to know what is required for excellence or alignment with your values, but it takes courage to act on that knowledge consistently, especially when it conflicts with comfort, social pressures, or fear of failure. Courage enables you to confront challenges, make difficult decisions, and take responsibility for your actions even when outcomes are uncertain. Without courage, standards remain theoretical. They are ideals you aspire to but rarely implement. When courage and standards align, your actions reflect your principles and your life begins to demonstrate integrity, consistency, and intentionality. The combination of high standards and courage also shapes your environment and relationships. People respond to the expectations you set, consciously or unconsciously. When you demand excellence from yourself, you tend to attract similar energy in others and cultivate environments that support growth rather than stagnation. You are more selective with your time, the influences you allow, and the commitments you make, which reinforces positive momentum in all areas of life. Similarly, courage allows you to set boundaries, communicate clearly, and maintain focus even when distractions, pressures, or criticism arise. Ultimately, the quality of your life is a reflection of repeated choices aligned with these standards and supported by courage. Every decision, every habit, and every response compounds over time to either elevate or diminish your life experience. By consciously choosing higher standards and exercising the courage to uphold them, you transform ordinary behaviors into purposeful actions that directly influence your results, mindset, and sense of fulfillment, creating a trajectory where personal excellence, accountability, and intentional living consistently produce meaningful outcomes and sustain growth through deliberate effort and empowered decision making. So from this moment on, make a new decision. No more waiting, no more blaming, no more settling. Stand up mentally and say, this is my life, and I take full responsibility for making it extraordinary. Because the quality of your life is not decided by your circumstances. It is decided by your standards and your courage to own them. The power has always been with you. Now it's time to use it.